There's some, yeah, I mean, you don't need to be perfectly still. But seriously, there's some pretty bad stories I'm overhearing from teachers talking about what's going on in the school at the moment. So in terms of there's not enough staff to discipline the boys. There's so many cuts already.
Yeah. But the reality is, obviously, is that a lot of schools have been suffering from cuts. They've been suffering from cuts for a long time now.
Yeah.
There's little instrumental chipping away.
Yeah.
And so
Forest Hill had gone into its reserves responsibly, and then the council's left it
high and dry.
high and dry.
And saying it's washing their hands of their responsibility, which is disgraceful.
Yeah, this whole place. I mean, they could negotiate right now and get people back in for their exams. They could get.
Yeah.
They could put 200 grand into the school. They could sell one small home, but they're prepared to let a whole Forest Hill school slide because they've already said so and they've stuck their heads in the sand.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that the local authority will claim that there's nothing they can do, there's no legal avenues. It's simply not true.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen in Greenwich a similar situation with Plumstead Manor. That they went on strike. That's now been resolved because the council in the end recognised that they could extend loan periods, they could make other arrangements.
And sadly, it's our own mayor's loan has odd terms that require 30% cut to staff budget, whereas I mean, that seems almost discriminatory to me. There's so many things that they can adjust, and they're in denial.
Well, if there's a political will, they will find a way.
Yeah.
And the reality is that they've seemed to just stuck their head in the sand largely and said it's not our problem. As though the very fact is that, you know, I mean, initially they
leave the schools feeling like a prison every day for boys, not an educational centre.
And the council initially, you know, along with the head, didn't want to tell us, you know, haven't been upfront, haven't been transparent, and haven't been clear about, and so, you know. Well, you know, it's always hard to trust people who basically keep changing their story. I mean, they have had one story all along, which is nothing we can do, but the reasons why there's nothing they can do, or what the cause of the problem was, they've actually not been honest.
Yeah. And they could. I mean, they say it's happening to all schools, but then you have schools that are at the thin end of the wedge, you see, and they're kind of at the front of the line. If you think of a line of people with their arms linked, and if they want to save all schools, they have to save the ones on the front line, because otherwise you have a holy service and you're broken and you aren't able to defend education as a whole. Because you know, boys will go running like from a sinking ship if the retention is damaged, if the cuts go through here. And that affects all of the schools in the area in their fights.
I mean,
we must win this fight.
I mean, the reality is that you can. There is obviously on the horizon. There is a big funding problem about to appear, but you don't solve that problem by instrumenting cuts in schools early in a desperate attempt to show how bad it's going to be. I mean, what is the point? What you do is you know, that's a national campaign you have to fight, and they should be fighting that campaign.
I think all our councillors need to actually be able to weigh up the budget situation, not just sort of say, oh, there's nothing I can do. I think they might be taking some bad advice.
I mean, the councillors are very, very reliant on what the officers tell them, and unfortunately the officers have a tendency to be very conservative, very not thinking out of the box, but also not that well informed. They've got
a lot of qualifications, but
they often don't really know what the law is about these subjects, and have that slightly look of aghast, shock and horror that when you tell them, actually, you could do this, you could do that. I mean, this school's got a PFI contract, right? PFI is always right for renegotiation. Because you can always, I mean, they're a rip-off totally anyway, and the companies know they got like a golden goose, but you can always say the problem.
What do you think of this mischief?
I think this is shocking and outrageous.
That anyone should be having fun on the street in a good cause. Anyway, you're saying?
No,
the council can.
The council, you know, the council could put massive pressure on that company. And the very simple thing is, if this school has these cuts, like you say, that will have a really detrimental effect on the school, and it will lead to parents not sending their kids
and
there,
maybe that's
which
very
will
hard
lead
to
to a
quantify,
fall in
but-
roll. No, but that will lead to a fall in roll.
Yes!
And that falling roll will inevitably start a downward spiral. Because there'll be less funding because the pupil, money comes with pupils.
And that to you and me is clear as day. I don't think I think, where are the numbers? I don't know how to quantify that. Because they haven't got that kind of common empathy so much that they're not.
Well, I think there is, it's not even a case of them having to be imaginative. They've seen it in schools.
Yeah.
It happens. It's not like Lewisham's not experienced this with other schools that have struggled for one reason or other. Is that they all get a fall in roll unless you support and invest in these schools and help them turn round.
And people say it's it's not worth, but actually this is an existential threat to the education of almost 2,000. Is it 1,400 boys?
I'm not exactly sure on the numbers.
Could be losing grades, losing at GCSE.
Well, it's quite clear that what we're talking about is the education of the future of our local communities. These people need support to achieve their potential, and you can't do that on the cheap. You have to fully fund and resource education so there's real opportunity for all. Otherwise, basically, you're creating a there's already in a sense a two-tier system, but a two-tier system of failing schools.
Failing schools!